What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Locks DFS NBA breakdown. My name is Narang. I'm from locksdfs.com, and I'll be breaking down this four-game NBA main slate for Tuesday, November 19th. Before I get into that, though, if y'all want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at reallyaddy. If you want to join the team and get some access to our members-only content, including our private members-only Slack chat, go to locksdfs.com. And if you want to be entered into winning a free season pass of your choice, you can pick between NFL or NBA. All you got to do is leave a like on this video, leave a comment, and make sure you're subscribed. And we'll pick a winner on our Wednesday night videos for the Thursday Night Football Showdown. And yeah, we'll pick a winner there every week. So that's always a cool way to, keep yourself eligible to get a free pass. So with all that being said, let's jump into the slate. So four-game slate. So as you guys know, typically when these slates are a little bit smaller, I go game by game on them as opposed to position by position or just talking about players individually. So let's go game by game. And we're going to start with this Portland-New Orleans game. Opened at 231.5 over-under. That's the highest over-under on the slate by about 10 points, actually. It's since dropped to 230, probably because of the Lillard news. Which we'll get into. But still going to probably be the most fantasy-friendly game on this slate, the game that you're going to want to have the highest exposure to, just based on not only the pace. I mean, we got two teams that rank. New Orleans is 4th. The Trailblazers are 10th overall in pace of play this year. But also there's a bunch of injuries on both sides that are probably going to open up a ton of value. So let's start on the Portland side. I alluded to it earlier. Damian Lillard is going to be out for this game. So a bunch of guys are going to get a boost, and a few guys are going to get a pretty sizable boost. If we go over to NBA Wowie and we take Damian Lillard off the court, we see Anthony Simons has his 26.2% usage rate and averaging just about 0.88 fantasy points per minute. So at his current price tag of 4,400, he's probably going to be one of the more popular players on the slate. You're just not typically going to find that kind of usage rate at such low of a price, and to top it off, it's also an awesome matchup. So I'm gonna be way overweight on him. But then if you scroll down, another guy who gets a sizable boost is C.J. McCollum. We see his usage rate jump by almost 5, from around 24 to 29.7, close to 30. And he also starts averaging over 1.11 fantasy points per minute. That's a pretty sizable boost on what he usually averages as well. His price tag is a little bit high, but he's been performing. He's 7.8K, but I think without Damian Lillard, he makes a lot of sense as well. And I'll definitely have exposure to him. Then if we keep going, I mean, we got the debut of Carmelo Anthony. This is a Portland Trailblazers team that's been sort of looking for a scoring, small forward, power forward. They started Mario Hezonja for a good chunk of the games, and now they've since pivoted to Nasir Little. He's been performing fine. He is fairly underpriced as well at 3.5K. I'm just interested in seeing what role Melo has in this game. I've been looking for reports, haven't been able to find really anything. But if we get a report by the time this video goes up and by the time the slate locks, if we get a report that Melo's going to see anywhere close to 20 to 25 minutes, he'll be in play as well on a team that definitely needs scoring in a pace-up matchup, a good matchup, a bad defensive team in New Orleans. And he's going to, and like, I would anticipate him being the same Melo as usual, just a fairly shot-happy guy who can rack up fantasy points. Despite being on the plus side of his career. And then I guess I should talk about Hassan Whiteside. He's 6.3K. It's a really good spot for targeting big men versus New Orleans is probably always going to be a good spot, especially with Derek Favors out, Jahlil Okafor doubtful. His team ranks, what is this? Bottom 5 in overall rebound percentage. They rank second worst in the league in points in the paint. Those are both huge for guys. For a guy like Hassan Whiteside, I should say, who primarily scores in the paint, actually exclusively scores in the paint, and is also, his two main jobs are points in the paint and rebounding. So it kind of suits him at 6.3K. I think this is an awesome spot for him. He's just way too underpriced. So I don't think it's a bad slate to load up on some Trailblazers, potentially even 4 in your lineup because it is a fairly small slate. And then to bring it back on the New Orleans side, we have quite a few injuries here. So without definitive word on these injuries, I was kind of pushing back this video to see if we could get word on it, and all we've gotten is that these guys are questionable. So the guys who are out is going to be Derek Favors, and Jaleel Okafor is doubtful. So that's probably enough to confirm that Jackson Hayes and Nicolo Melli are good plays again. Jackson Hayes got 32 minutes last game without these two guys playing. Nicolo Melli got 28. Both of them are pretty solid fantasy point per minute guys. Jackson Hayes is a little bit better, but he's also a little bit more expensive. I think they're both in play if Jaleel Okafor gets officially ruled out. He's currently doubtful. I anticipate that'll happening, so I anticipate them being in play. And then in some of these other positions, Frank Jackson, questionable. Lonzo Ball, questionable. And Brandon Ingram, all questionable. So, if they play, then you can get some exposure to these guys at fairly reduced price points. 7.2K is pretty cheap for Brandon Ingram. 5.4K is fairly cheap for Lonzo Ball. But primarily what them playing would do, it would mitigate all this sort of New Orleans value that people are looking towards. Guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's been performing in the absence of Lonzo Ball and Frank Jackson. Drew Holiday, since these three guys have been out, has sported over a 30% usage rate. It's currently 31.2. Other guys that have seen pretty notable boosts are Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 24.8, Etuan Moore 24.1. Fantasy point per minute wise, Drew has been the beast that we know he is. 1.23 DraftKings fantasy points per minute. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been over 1 as well. Etuan Moore has not been too shabby either, just around 0.86. So all these guys would remain in play if Ingram, Ball, and Jackson were to miss, or if some combination of them were to miss. The subsequent players that play at their position would see a boost as well. So essentially for me, I'm going to be looking at guys like Drew Holiday. If these guys miss, 8.8K to run this game back. It's a close spread. It's a high over-under. I'm going to be overexposed to this game. Jackson Hayes, who I've already mentioned. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is definitely in play as well. But yeah, so with that being said, still waiting on a lot of injury news in that Pelicans game, so be on the lookout for that. But let's move on to the Golden State-Memphis game. Also injury news to be talked about here. Obviously, all the big guys out, but now D'Angelo Russell is out as well. So that's going to open up a guy like Kai Bowman at 4.7K, a guy like Alec Burks at 5K. Last game that D-Russ missed, they ran Draymond Green at point guard, and he just didn't look pretty at all. He had 4 assists, 3 turnovers. Didn't really move the needle too much, and I don't know if it's something Steve Kerr is going to want to go back to. As opposed to Kai Bowman, who had a pretty rough first half, but he came on in the second half and performed admirably. So I think they might just go back to their typical Kai Bowman at point guard. And if that were to happen, then I'd be interested in that. I think you can give Draymond Green maybe a slight boost, although I think it's marginal. I think we've yet to see sort of the impact that missing all these star players is going to have on Draymond. Because he is a guy who depends, on other players for his fantasy points. While he can rack up, rebounds and defensive stats, it's like those assists, being open for wide open threes, that's sort of like contingent on other superstars around him. So interested in seeing this, but regardless, it's a good spot versus Memphis that ranks 6th overall in pace. So I think you can really look to a lot of these Golden State guys for value, primarily Bowman and Burks, but also guys like Draymond Green, etc. The Memphis side, I don't have too much of an interest in it. They're a healthy team. I think an interesting play, I think the most interesting play for me on this Memphis side is probably these big guys like Jonas Valanciunas and Jaren Jackson Jr. This Golden State team's been super giving to big guys all year, points in the paint wise, rebound percentage wise, all stuff that Jonas does really well. We saw him on a minutes cap early to start the season, but he's pushed 30 in a few of these games, 27 versus San Antonio, 30 versus Utah. Golden State is a fairly big team. They run Willie Cauley-Stein, Eric Pascal, Draymond Green out there for a lot of minutes. So I do think that we could see Jonas push 25-plus minutes, which would make him an interesting GPP play. But on a slate with this much value, like a guy like Hassan Whiteside is 500 cheaper, I'm just going to be sort of making the Hassan Whiteside play more often than not. So yeah, that was already 10 minutes on 2 games. So let's keep moving on to this Phoenix-Sacramento game, where, surprise, surprise, we got injury news again. Ricky Rubio, questionable for this game, as is Aaron Baines. That just came out that Aaron Baines is questionable for this game as well. Two guys probable, Frank Kaminsky and Dario Saric. I'm assuming both of them are going to play. If Aaron Baines were to miss this game, both those guys would see pretty sizable boost. Primarily Frank Kaminsky. He would become one of the more chalkier players on the slate. He's already been performing off the bench in limited minutes. He's put up, close to 30 fantasy points in multiple games, over 30 fantasy points, and quite a few more. So if Aaron Baines were to miss, Frank Kaminsky becomes, one of the best players on the slate, as well as Dario Saric. As far as value goes, 5.5K for a guy that should see, a 5 to 6 minute boost on his already, close to 30 minutes of playtime. In this sort of favorable matchup makes a lot of sense. And then if Ricky Rubio were to miss, then we would see boosts for a few guys. Tyler Johnson, he would probably pick up the start and be my preferred of the two value options between him and Javon Carter. Although Javon Carter would see a sizable roll off the bench as well. I think you could even peg him close to 20 minutes. But if Tyler Johnson is going to see anywhere from 28 to 30 minutes in the absence of Ricky Rubio, at 3.5K, that's just a play you have to make. And then a guy like Devin Booker as well, he would see some increased ball handling upside, which would just boost his assist floor and give him a stronger floor overall. So he would make sense as well in a pretty good matchup. And then on the Sacramento side, De'Aaron Fox remains out. So Corey Joseph is probably going to get the start as he has in all these games. He got 38 minutes in that first game, but since he's sort of just been average, and his minutes have reflected that with 23 and 26. Guys like Yogi Ferrell, he saw 28 minutes in the one game that Corey Joseph was really struggling. So I guess he could make some sense as a GPP value pivot almost. Bojan Bogdanovic has now sort of reached his price for me. 7.1K. I think he was an awesome play when De'Aaron Fox was out, and he was still around 4K or 5K, even 6K. But pushing 7K, I think you're kind of getting to the top of his salary range, which is going to make it tough for him to pay this off. He could certainly easily reach value here, 35 fantasy points, but it sort of puts a cap on his ceiling. So not sure if I'm going to be going to too many other places in this game. But yeah, so now moving on to this last game, OKC LA. I believe it's the lowest total game on the slate at 210.5, but there's still some viable fantasy plays in this game that we'll get into. So on the OKC side, there's a pretty viable. So weird that the first guy I'm going to talk about on this OKC side is going to be Terrence Ferguson, but Hamidou Diallo remains out. Andre Roberson remains out for this game as well. And so in those two games, we've seen Terrence Ferguson play 39 and 35 minutes. In the Philly game, he was really hot from three, so he got there easily. But even in the Clippers game, where he wasn't really shooting the ball too much, he still got there just on the back of rebounds and steals and the fact that he's super cheap. Getting 17.75, close to 18 fantasy points from 3.9K of salary is certainly going to play. It's not awesome, but it'll work for what it opens up for you. So I think Terrence Ferguson at 3.9K makes for a decent value play, although we do have a lot of better ones emerging. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander struck me as pretty cheap, 6.1K, as did Dennis Schroeder and Steven Adams. They're on a back-to-back. They played last night in LA as well, so it's not as serious of a back-to-back. Not like they traveled to a different city or a different stadium. So I think you can go right back to most of these guys. I think Schroeder at 4.8. I mean, this was a guy that was just 6'1" a few games ago. He got up to 6'1". He sort of maintains the mid 5K, mid 5K, low 6K sort of range. And so seeing him at 4.8K is just going to be a value play. I mean, once he starts shooting more efficiently, as he hasn't in the past few games, but once he starts shooting more efficiently, he's going to smash his price tag. And I think in this sort of matchup, that's definitely something that we could see happen. And then on the LA side of things, it's kind of interesting because I don't know if you're going to be able to afford any guy like LeBron James or even Anthony Davis, who, despite this Q, he's probable as he has been for all these games. He sort of hasn't been performing the past two games in pretty good matchups, but it's just sort of been like LA's looked great. He hasn't really had to shoulder the load, no pun intended, with his bum shoulder. But I think in the future and what should be competitive games, he will certainly be in play. Maybe not in this spot here versus OKC on a back-to-back. So don't think I'm going to get to any of these two Lakers guys. Both of them make fine plays. And if you're playing GPP, I would definitely try and get, some percentage of exposure to them as well because they're capable of, breaking the entire slate. But I think for cash games, you could probably get away with not playing either one of them, just based on the value in these other games, specifically the Portland one. But yeah, so that should wrap it up. Is there any other? Oh yeah, Rajon Rondo not on a minutes limit anymore. Should probably have noted that. It officially got lifted. So 4.5K, he makes some sense as well. If we get word that he's going to play anything above 30 minutes, he makes a ton of sense. So that should wrap it up. With that all being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do leave a like. Please do leave a comment. Both those things mean a ton. And you'll be entered into winning a free season pass of your choice. But yeah, so I will see you guys. Christian will get tomorrow's video, and I will see y'all on Thursday. Peace.